There are 36 different skills in Atomfall, and today I'm going to go over each of them, give them a ranking, and explain how I came to that conclusion. There'll be 5 tiers of ratings, helpfully indicated by these on-screen images or GIFs. I haven't decided which I'll use yet, but hopefully they'll help to get the point across. We're starting off with the range combat skills, and first of these I'm going to cover is weapon throw training. As the name would hint at, this skill makes it so that throwing melee weapons is far more effective. Honestly, I don't think throwing melee weapons is typically a great combat strategy, but it is fun to do. Considering this skill only costs a single training stimulant, I'd say it's well worth it. Not for being anything great, but for being fun and cheap. Throwables damage is up next, and Atomfall is sticking with the straightforward naming protocol so far. Your explosives and whatnot dealing more damage is a definite bonus, and makes it much easier to take down tough endgame enemies. For the fairly low cost of only 3 training stimulants, this is another skill that's definitely good. Final of the starting range skills is Throwables Radius, giving greater area of effect for these weapons. This is a solid effect, but not one that I think is worth the hefty 6-point cost. This is going to be our first bad skill for that reason. You're much better off just aiming precisely in order to group everyone at once. Firearms Focus is the first of our unlock skills, and this one boosts your gun damage when heart rate is low. This is a great effect in my opinion, especially as someone who plays as a bit of a sniper. This skill does cost a pretty high 6 points though, but I still do think it's worth it overall. Firearms Handling costs a little less at 4, and reduces sway when aiming down sights. Headshots pretty much guarantee you a one-shot kill on standard human enemies, so I always want to be able to land these. Once again, I think this is a good skill that's worth the cost. Firearm Stability now, which reduces recoil from your guns. I don't think this is as needed as overall accuracy, as most weapons are either single shot or semi-auto, but this is a nice little boost for anyone who ends up relying on the small handful of automatic weapons of a game and likes to hold the trigger down. Skill doesn't feel amazing to me, but at only 2 points to unlock, I think this one makes it into the good category just for being good value. Time for the bow skills, starting with Bow Focus. This will let you briefly slow down time when the bow is fully drawn by pressing a button. I do think this effect is fairly solid, helping to ensure you can land those headshots with a bit more ease, but I also think that 6 points is just a little too high a price to pay for that small bonus, so I'm rating this one as bad. A little too expensive for my liking, especially considering it's just a mild upgrade for a single weapon. Draw control is up next, and this makes it so that your heart rate doesn't affect how long it takes you to draw a bow. This is pretty good, as otherwise you end up being real slow at loosing your bow, and I've definitely died once or twice due to this effect. But this is a situational boost to a single weapon, and for 4 cost I don't think I'm going to rate it as good, nor as bad. This one gets a meh from me. It's okay, I guess. Final range skill is Draw Speed, which increases bow draw speed. Only costs 2 points and essentially does the same thing as the previous skill, but all the time and for half the cost. Definitely a good skill and the best of the bow ones as far as I'm concerned. Onto the melee combat skills now, kicking it off with Kick Stun Duration. This gives your kicks more of a stagger, helping to ensure you have time to land an actual attack on an enemy after giving them the boot. Doesn't sound all that special, but for just a single training stimulant, I'd say this is another good skill that's well worth the meagre cost. Kill Momentum is next, and this makes it so that you get a melee damage buff whenever you kill an enemy with a melee attack. This is very good for large battles against multiple opponents, but you know what's not good for battling multiple opponents? Melee. Melee is not good for big group fights. Great for one-on-one, but not so good when you're outnumbered. For 4 points, I'm afraid I'm going to have to put this in the bad category. Thick Skin is next, granting damage reduction against melee attacks. This is undeniably a good effect, especially as a couple of enemy types are melee only. The problem is that this costs 5 points, which is a pretty high cost considering you can also just walk away from melee enemies to dodge their attacks entirely. Not going to put this one in the bad category, but I am rating it as meh, because that's just a little too expensive for me. Surprise Attack lets you deal more damage to unaware enemies. The description sounds great in isolation, and I want to put it in the good category, but my problem is that it's in the melee combat section, which makes me think that it would only affect melee weapons, which feels kinda pointless. You could just do a takedown instead. Given that I'm not sure how effective this skill actually is, and it does cost 5 whole points, I'm going to give it a meh rating. If it turns out it works on everything, then it's good. If it only works out on melee, then it's bad. Quiet Movement has the exact same cost, but without any of the confusion. You just become quieter with the skill, brilliant for stealth builds, but even helpful for those of you who are more direct. By being a tad quieter, you'll be able to get the drop on enemies more often, which is a key factor in winning a fight. Easy good skill right here. The other stealthy skill is Quiet Takedown, which makes takedowns quieter. Rebellion really did make most of these skills pretty straightforward, eh? This is kind of helpful, can definitely come in handy as you play, and for only 2 points, I'd say a good skill overall. Heavy melee attack power on the other hand takes a very different approach, upping the damage of your melee weapons, but only when you do a charged heavy attack. Heavy melee attacks already aren't particularly good, as what normally happens is you take damage while charging the attack, and that interrupts you entirely. If this only cost a single point, then maybe it could be kind of okay, but it costs 7, which is as expensive as skills get, so this skill is pure trash. It's not bad, it's worse than bad. Not even good for more melee-focused playthroughs. Seasoned Brawler, on the other hand, is nowhere near as terrible, reducing the heart rate build-up for melee attacks. This is a very good effect, and I don't think the 5-point cost is ridiculous, but I'm going to rate this one just as okay, more so just because melee isn't that good. This is a helpful skill, but it's a fairly high investment for something that won't serve most players all that well. Final of the melee skills is melee weapon attack power, and I don't think I need to tell you what the effect is here. I know I just said that melee isn't all that strong, but it still can be handy early on, and for just 2 training stimulants, this is the sort of investment that is well worth it. A definite good skill in my books. Time for the survival skills now, where we begin with Scavenger. This allows you to search bodies and containers faster, which isn't a useless buff to have, but anything more than a single point cost wouldn't be worth it. Instead, it costs 5 whole points, which makes it terrible. Do not waste your stimulants on this skill. Charisma makes it so your items are worth more when bartering, which is helpful, especially if you make sure to visit every vendor as you travel around the regions. Problem is, it costs 4 points, which in my opinion is just a little too expensive for a skill which isn't going to make much of a difference to your playthrough. Afraid Charisma lands in the bad category, which really doesn't help with the Fallout comparisons. Disarm Traps is up next, and I'm not going to bury the lead here. This skill is excellent, easily among the best in the game. It lets you disarm tripwires for string, but also defuses the molotovs and grenades they have rigged up to them, meaning you can always stay stocked up on 2 of the best throwables in the game. Only costs 3 points and is good no matter how you play. Excellent skill, get it every single playthrough. Another skill I love is Gunsmith. This allows you to upgrade your firearms, stopping them from being rusty and instead making them stock or pristine. Pristine weapons are the best in the game, and the only way to get them is with this skill. I really want to mark this as an excellent skill, but it does cost 7 points, making it the tied highest skill in the game, so I'm going to have to just rate it as good. Still very much worth it, but it is pricey and will take a while to unlock and manage to actually upgrade everything, given that you need to use crafting components and have multiple of the guns, and there's a lot to it. Deep Pockets, however, I think is overall a bit better, allowing you to carry more crafting components and ammo. I love this skill, even at 5 points. I still think it's really good, and I don't really have anything else to say about it. Crafting speed doesn't have that great of an effect, just letting you craft items faster, but it does only cost a single point. Sure, it's better to just do your crafting outside of a fight, but if you fail to prepare, then this skill could help you out. Honestly, not an effect you need, but for such a cheap cost, it's okay to pick up regardless. Gut Health makes it so food consumables gives you a damage resistance effect, the same as painkillers. This is a decent effect, though I can't help but think of the fact that you're normally going to be eating food outside of combat, so you're not getting the painkillers effect for as long as if you just used the painkillers consumable before a fight. And for a sinister 6 points, I think that overall this ends up as a bad skill, though only just. However, if you tie it in with buff duration, then it's much better. This makes it so that consumable effects last for longer, potentially giving you better bang for your buck. At a 4 point cost, I don't think this is bad, though it's not all that good either. An okay skill to pick up, though it will depend on how heavily you like to pop some pills. Final survival skill is Blue Fingers. This only costs 2 points, which is nice and cheap, and that's the only good thing I have to say about it. All this does is let you gather spores from certain weird plants that have started growing out of the ground. Not only are these pretty rare, but they're mostly found in late game areas, and all you get out of them are the spore crafting item, which isn't even a particularly good crafting component anyway. I don't want to spend 2 of my very limited skill points in order to gather something I don't particularly need. terrible skill, even with the cheap cost. Onto the final section now, conditioning. First skill here is Fortitude, increasing maximum health. Costs 5 points to give you an extra 25% hit points. While this is a reasonable increase to your overall HP pool, I personally find that it's not going to make a huge difference in most fights, as you either take very little damage or get utterly torn to shreds. If it was cheaper, then I'd be okay with it, but I think I'm going to end up putting it in the bad rankings overall. For the record, if it was just 1 point cheaper, then I'd be saying it's okay, but it's not, so I'm going to have to be harsh and say it's bad. Recovery is next, and makes it so you get more passive health regen when your health is low. This is a nice little effect, helping you to heal up more after a fight where you took a fair bit of damage, and could be the difference between having to use a bandage or a first aid kit. Another 5 cost one, and I think I'm putting it in the bad ratings for the exact same reasoning as the last skill. Once again, just a single point cheaper and it'd be okay. Now we have endurance training, which makes your heart rate rise slower and recover faster. This means you can sprint for longer, attack more often, and stay more accurate in a firefight. The heart rate meter has such a big effect on almost everything you do, and even for a 5 stimulant cost, I still think this skill is excellent, and one that you should pick up on every playthrough. Next up, I'm going to talk about Healing Boost, which makes your consumables heal more. Pretty decent effect overall, but one that I find isn't really needed. If you're needing to do a full heal, then you'll just use a first aid kit regardless, but I suppose this could save you a handful of bandages over the course of a playthrough. Gonna rank this as just an okay skill, as it does cost 5 points, which is a bit much in my opinion. All we have left now are the resistance perks, so I'm going to be grouping these up. Both bleed and burn resistance suck. They each cost 4 points to purchase and do exactly what you'd expect of them. Bleed and burn are both status effects you'll end up dealing with in combat, but in my books, they're not the thing which will kill you. What will kill you is the outlaw with a sickle or a robot with a flamethrower. The status effect is just a bit of extra salt in the wound, but if you've taken enough hits to have the effect trigger anyway, then chances are you're already dead. Bad skills for this reason, and just not worth the entry ticket. Poison and radiation resistance also both cost 4 points and help you to deal with more environmental effects. By purchasing these skills, you can potentially run through small poison or radiation clouds, so I can see a reason for picking them up. Overall though, not something I'd typically pick up, but I'll rate them as okay skills all in all. And finally, we have Infection Resistance, which is incredible. Top tier skill for certain, boosting resistance against infection, which you will have to deal with from both attacks and as an environmental effect. This essentially makes it 2 resistance skills in one, which is already a stark improvement. But what makes it an excellent skill is the fact it's free. This is the only skill in the game which costs 0 training stimulants, being unlocked the second you inoculate yourself. Any skill you get for free is going to be an instant excellent rating. And those were my rankings of every single skill in Atomfall. Hopefully this helps some of you decide which skills to pick and which to avoid. If you have your own takes on any of the skills, then I'm sure you'll leave them in the comments. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed, and if you want to see more Atomfall content from me, then you can check out my tips and tricks video, or even head over to Bad Company Gaming, where I'm doing a Kill Everything playthrough, with new episodes up every Monday and Friday. That's it from me for now, so as always, thanks for watching. Sarge out.